Happy Wisdom Wednesday, everyone, and this week's book of the week is Traversing the Traction Gap by Bruce Cleveland, who is the founding partner at Wildcat Ventures, a venture capital firm here in Silicon Valley. Now, one concept that I've always been interested in since I got my career started in surgical robotics is the idea of creating a category and how do you develop a market. Now, one thing that I unfortunately noticed was that there weren't a whole lot of books that talked about that. Probably one of my favorite books on the topic of adoption and technology innovation is Crossing the Chasm, and fortunately and interestingly enough, Geoffrey Moore is actually an advisor here at Wildcat Ventures and wrote the foreword to the book. So what's the book about? Well, Bruce Cleveland noticed that there are a lot of failures in the startup world. As we all know, 80% of startups actually fail. And what he noticed is that many of them are great product engineers, but they had a hard time, getting traction in the market and traversing what he calls the traction gap. And the reason for that, and this is what really caught my eye with this book when he published it last year, is because of the lack of the ability and understanding of how to engineer a market. So I'm going to walk you through some of that framework, and if you're interested in getting more on this framework, of course, buy this book. You will thank me later. You'll reference it quite a lot. But you can head to Wildcat's website, wildcat.vc, to download the PDFs of the frameworks found in this book. So let me walk you through. So this right here is the traction gap framework, right? And some of us are familiar with this, right? You start with an idea, you have a product, you gain some traction, and you go to scale. A lot of books and a lot of things written on the go to scale area, a lot of things written on the go to product area. Not a whole lot of things written about the go-to-market category section, and that's what Bruce wrote this book for. Now, if we look over on the product side, you start with what he calls the minimally viable category. And as you start moving, you go to initial product release, minimally viable product, which is what we're all familiar with from Eric Ries and Steve Blank. We learned about the minimally viable product, right? From there, you get minimally viable repeatability, meaning not only have you sold this product, but have you sold different versions of this product repeatedly to customers, right? And this is showing that you're gaining traction. And then you finally get to minimally viable traction, right? And that's what helps you to essentially go to scale. The problem is that a lot of startups, they fail right around here, right? Oftentimes not even getting to MVP. And even if they do get to MVP in their heads, they don't have enough to show repeatability and traction where they're going to attract more investment, which is what it takes to start getting to the go to scale area. And then they essentially die, right? Now, I want to focus on the area that I'm most fascinated about throughout my career, and I'm thankful that Bruce actually came up with a term for this, which is MVC, minimally viable category, or how do you engineer a category? And if you notice, if you took this framework right here and kind of put it kind of like a slope, like an adoption curve, just like in Geoffrey Moore's book, you have this gap here, and in order to get the right amount of momentum to go over that gap and gain traction, you got to do the first thing that's correct, which is MVC, minimally viable category, right? Now let me give you a story about a minimally viable category. So we all know Mark Benioff and the successful unicorn Salesforce. Well, that's a great example of it. See, back in the day, a lot of companies had to go with the enterprise solution of essentially buying this clunky software, right? And Mark Benioff noticed a gap in the market and took a weakness of the category kings in enterprise software and created a new category. And I'm going to draw this famous ad that he first came up with, which is the word software and then a circle crossing it out, right? And the reason why that was important is that he showed for enterprise customers and businesses that you don't need software to have your own software to do this. We'll take care of the software. You sign up with us, we'll take care of all the software. And this is really what gave birth to the category that we all know as software as a service, SaaS. I bet you didn't know that. So that by itself created a category, and they owned it, and we all seen what happened with Salesforce, right? Now, when it comes to the principles of the minimally viable category, there are 4 areas that every chapter Bruce puts out, he touches on, where these are the principles that you have to focus on. So on the product side, The product, you're generating and gathering a lot of market feedback, and the reason why is because you need this to verify the product that you're about to build, and more importantly, the features you're going to build in it. A lot of this comes from, of course, early adopters, but more importantly, from non-customers in the market, right? And the idea is this something the market really wants? Because what the Valley is really good at is creating really cool products, but then when you go to the market decides that it's not that cool and valuable. And this is especially true in the B2B world, right? On the revenue side, this is where you have to define or redefine a category. And by doing this, you're going to either build or compete in it, right? This is the part that's important, because you have to understand and position yourself like, who are we and who are we positioning against? When you do this, you're going to lock in the initial value proposition, the pricing models, and of course, your positioning. By doing this, most importantly, you decide who you are, what you stand for, and who you're going to be serving. From there, you get to teams. You don't want to hire anybody who can't accelerate you to this point, initial product release. Why? Because when you go from minimally viable category, you are gaining as much momentum acceleration as possible to IPR, to initial product release, and that's going to really help you start traversing the traction gap. If you don't have momentum going to this, you're done, essentially. And then on the system side, this is where you want to establish your startup's governance, and more importantly, your identity, who you are, what you stand for, and your core values. And this is a great scheme that Bruce actually shares in his book, and that's the messaging matrix. And I'm just going to move you guys over just real quick right here. So on the messaging matrix, the problem with this is that if you don't have your right messaging down, you don't have the right branding, guess what? Every single employee who is an asset to the marketing team that is in your company is going to decide what the company stands for in their own words. And of course, now you have mixed messaging and signals going out to the market constantly. And the problem with that is that your company becomes a wandering generality instead of a very meaningful specific. So on that messaging matrix, here's what that document has to have. Number one, what the company does. Kind of basic, but you'd be surprised how a lot of companies don't have that. So what does the company do? How does the product not only fit in the market, but how does it stand out? From and to definitions, meaning we're taking this market or our customers from here to here. And if you think about any journey, whether it's for a customer or even a human being, we're starting somewhere and we're trying to depart and leave one place and arrive somewhere else. So where are you finding your customers and where are you trying to get them to? And you do that not only for the customer, but for the market and the current products and technologies on hand. Your mission statement, and lastly, competitive positioning in terms of who you are against the competition. And once you actually have this all together, this is a document that you post digitally within the company, and you tell the whole company, hey, this is who we are. You can, convey it however you like, as long as you use this framework and the language. And, to sort of add to that, this is why, in my opinion, at least the way I was trained early in my career, it's important not only to have an elevator pitch about who the company is and what the product does, but also have every single member of the company, from accounting to marketing to sales to R&D, all learn and memorize that elevator pitch. So that is the book of the week. And one more thing, the reason why I think this is such a fantastic book is because it's based off of one of the key principles in a classic marketing book, the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, because law number 2 is create and own a category. And that's really what this all is. Marketing is the ability to mold and engineer a market, and Bruce Cleveland does a fantastic job conveying that in this book. So go out and get this book. I definitely highly recommend it. Check out their website for more on that framework, and as always, happy Wisdom Wednesday, and I'll see you next week.